Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a fine Sunday morning out there to you fantasy football fans out there in the Woo Nation. But look, surprise, we're back with an episode of Woo Fantasy Game Day Morning, right here, brought to you as always by rotoballer.com. That is right. Go to rotoballer.com for all your one-stop shop needs for everything fantasy. We've got you covered. As always, promo code WOO there to sign up. Special discount at checkout there. We've got you covered. Fantasy through the rest of the season with the premium discount. Also, NBA's kicked off. You've got NHL going right now too. Obviously, MLB's finishing up with the World Series over the course of the next few days. But we're back to talk a little bit of Week 8 fantasy football action with my co-host, as always, the real FF GOAT himself, Nick Heffley. How are we doing today, sir?
What's up, y'all? Hey, the wife and the kids are away for a couple hours, so what better way to spend a Sunday morning, right?
That's right. When the cat's away, the mice will play. And we're going to play a little fantasy football with you guys today on Woo Fantasy Game Day Morning, getting you ready for Week 8. So, I mean, we're past the halfway point. Fantasy football regular season. It's amazing. Wow. We're already here.
Seems like we were just talking preseason the other day. Like, here we are.
Yeah. Like we were just putting together the live stream of one of the last drafts that we were doing not long ago, and now here we are, 7 weeks in. Got the trade deadline coming up here in the next couple of days. NFL trade deadline is on Tuesday at I believe 4 Eastern. So a lot of interesting tidbits hitting the wire out there over the course of the next few days. But outside of that, what's your general take on things fantasy right now, or just general news and notes?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things you've really got to take a look at your team, figure out where you're at. Like I've got a team right now, 6-1. I am just stacked like crazy on my bench, and I'm trying to package two guys to get one. So just made a deal the other day, trading off Devonta Smith and Romeo Dobbs, and got Cooper Kupp for a very needy team out there. But trying to get those upper echelon guys. But in the same regard, if you got a team that's 2-5, 3-4, doing what you need to do, placing yourself in those positions to be able to ready your team for this stretch run. So, and I think it's one of those deals too, as we go in, like you mentioned in the trade deadline, with that coming up, like who are some guys that can get moved? Jerry Jeudy's been talked up like crazy. Cortland Sutton, that wide receiver room there in Denver. Marvin Mims is a sneaky stash. I know you were talking to me the other day about Marvin Mims there, and what a stash he could be. I think I read a little bit earlier this morning that Derrick Henry will not be dealt, so all the Tajay Spears owners out there can unfortunately let out a little bit of a gas. But like a team like that, like why, if you're the Titans, why don't you go ahead and deal him? Like you've got a very capable guy that right now could probably be your lead back. Like why not go ahead and deal Derrick Henry and play for the future? So. That's where I'm at. By the way, before we go any further, because he's not going to mention, but I will, kudos to our boy here, B, with a great early season call. Hopefully if you listen to him on Puka Nacua, because I sure as hell went about him. I thought at the very least, Cooper Kupp was going to come in and dominate the touches, and since he's come back, he's done good. But Puka's actually gone up in touches. So you know what? I was not a believer. Kudos to B, because I'm sure the leagues that he's B.
This guy, I don't know.
Kudos to the leagues that he's in, that he has Puka, which is probably every league that he's in, and I'm sure he's doing pretty good. But I had to give it to him up live on the air, because Yeah, he's been patting himself for much too long. He needs to throw it out to everybody else. So,
Well, I mean, I don't have him in every league that I'm in. The only leagues that I don't have him in are the leagues that that we're in with your little brother.
oh, okay. Well, yeah,
Who
because you talked him
drafted
up
him?
too much. See, this
Yeah,
is your problem.
who
That's your
drafted him
fault.
early. Well, the reason he started drafting him in some of these drafts and drafting him rounds earlier so that I wouldn't get him is the co-managed Superflex or the Superflex league that we do in Kentucky. Obviously, Puka was a last round pick for us in that league, and he, of course, was asking questions like, "Man, you've drafted him all weekend. You must really be high on him." I was like, "Yeah, he's going to be on every one of my rosters." So that I missed out on
Fantasy
because
football analyst right there.
yeah.
But you and I would always know all the leagues that we're all in. Like we know who each other likes, and we can target that. Like,
Oh, for sure.
You could be an analyst, that wouldn't matter anyway. So,
No, that's for damn sure. But now going back to the trade deadline, you were talking up Derrick Henry. I had kind of a thought about that. Really over the course of the last couple of days, and what it akins to is, to me, if they hold Derrick Henry, this is akin to what we've talked about over the last several years, is the Cardinals holding on to
St.
Adam
Louis
Wainwright.
Cardinals.
Yeah, St. Louis Cardinals holding on to Adam Wainwright and Yadier Molina way too long for nostalgia purposes, just to keep people coming into the stands. That's what this would feel like if the Titans do hold on to Derrick Henry. Obviously, you're in a rebuild. You're about to be moving into a rebuild with this franchise. Tannehill going out the door. We're going to see Will Levis and Malik Willis today in dual packages that they've planned for both quarterbacks on the field. I think last I saw was 75% Levis, 25% packages for Malik Willis. So we're getting into that old
like
ball coach.
Football.
Yeah, old ball coach, little Florida. We're going to bring in Danny Werfel and then swap out and go to Jesse Palmer on the next round. So not the greatest thing whatsoever.
Chris Leak and Tim Tebow?
Yeah, right. Yeah, we're just going to.
Well, that's just post Spurrier, but yeah.
Post Spurrier, but that's not, I mean, that just doesn't work when it comes to the NFL. So obviously, Atlanta Falcons defense, go get them, play them today.
Oh,
they're absolutely in every one of my DFS lineups today.
So is there a situation? I know obviously you talked up Mims to me the other day, so that's obviously a situation you're paying close attention to for the trade deadline. Any other spots, any other scenarios that you're kind of prepping yourself for with waivers? You know, this past week or going into next week. Any situations you're really keeping an eye on just to, you know, maybe steal something there?
Well, the big thing is, of course, you know, Derrick Henry is really the big, you know, domino that we're waiting to see fall and how that's going to unfold, because that's going to affect two backfields. Obviously, it's going to raise the fantasy value of Tyjae Spears, but then wherever Derrick Henry lands, it adds an absolute atom bomb to that backfield that's already in place there. So you have to kind of start thinking in process of that. But like you mentioned, yeah, Marvin Mims, if he's still available on the waiver wire for you, and you know, whether it be some shallower leagues like a 10-team league, something like that, he's probably out there because a lot of owners, managers have picked him up. Oh crap, the guy got me one target today and then threw him back out to the waiver wire. You do need to plan ahead for situations like this, because you know, there's word that there is a offer on the table for Jerry Jeudy, but that could be just GM speak at this point in time to try to generate more offers. It's just like, you know, us as fantasy managers out there. Hey, I'm coming to you with this trade offer. I got this guy's already dealt, but I wanted to see if you could if you wanted to make a deal for him and possibly, you know, maybe give me a little bit better of a deal here. It's the same to that. Same situation
Sure.
to that. But obviously, I think another one that's kind of flying under the radar, I know they've said that they're not going to deal him, is Devontae Adams. I think that's a situation I monitor too, because I know he wants out of there. That's goes without saying. Just a matter of, can a team pay a price to go get him, fly under the radar? But at the end of the day, when it comes to the NFL trade deadline, let's be honest with ourselves. We get all fluttered and excited that the trade deadline's coming each and every single year. And then what happens? It craps the bed almost every single year. We never get anything of great importance to us as fantasy analysts and fantasy managers. Nothing really ever happens out there. So that's the biggest thing for me. I think the biggest spot that I've looked to and try to plan for or hold on to, like you mentioned, was Marvin Mims, because I feel like that situation is one that's going to play out where there's a lot of cloudiness surrounding a lot of other areas and not a lot of uncertainty when it comes to that with the trade deadline. So not a lot that I'm pointing to outside of the Marvin Mims situation right now.
Yeah, I mean, I know you and I had chatted back and forth about it on Twitter too. I mean, another scenario out there, which I don't know how much of an impact it's going to have necessarily, at least on the guy's current team, but maybe where he goes. Dalvin Cook is another scenario that I don't know if he's going to be dealt. I mean, just like you and I had talked about, like why in the first place even go to the Jets? I mean, clearly Breece Hall was only going to miss maybe a couple weeks. So you're going in a scenario where you're thinking you maybe have a 50% timeshare there. But I mean, you don't even have that. He's rushing the ball 2 or 3 times a week. Not what is he seeing, about 15, maybe 15% snap share over there. I mean, it's just a scenario that you're not really lending yourself very well toward. So again, one of those situations that I don't think he is gonna get moved, but if he does, depending on the scenario, depending on where he goes, if he goes anywhere, he could have a little bit of an impact out there. Maybe, again, I don't. Obviously, he's had to have lost a step since last year. He's had to for the Jets not to be playing him, but there's still a little bit of juice left in that tank. But you go to a situation out there that like the Rams, maybe. I don't know. You go to a situation like, I mean, hell, the Cowboys. You go to a. I'm just saying, B. I mean, you go to a scenario. I mean, you got Tony Pollard, not exactly, going out there demanding a line share of the carry. The backups behind him are not exactly great. I don't think he's going to do much, but if you have a Zeke type role, which I mean, Zeke is moving up and getting a little bit more of that work there in New England, could be something. But again, I don't think it's going to affect too much, but maybe you stash a Dalvin Cook on your bench where, you've got a pretty bad backup out there just to see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's the report this morning. I think Diana Rossini put out there is that as far as trade deadline teams, what they're looking for is the Baltimore Ravens are legitimately looking into the running back market. So are the Cleveland Browns. Not shocked about that. But then you've got some teams, I think she said Cleveland Browns are looking into the wide receiver position. That one was shocking to me because you do have kind of depth at the wide receiver position. You just have a quarterback that doesn't want to get on the field and play.
Sure.
But then the Miami Dolphins, she did mention we're a team that we're going to check in on the running back position, which was that one was a little bit shocking too. You got Mostert playing well. Wilson's coming back from the injury. And then here in the next week or two, you're going to have Achane coming back from his IR stint as well. So that's kind of something to monitor there. I think the other trade that seems to be a possibility is Nick's Bears possibly going after Chase Young. That's on the table. Obviously, they have a lot of draft capital and payroll that they could support that trade with.
I mean, I thought that was going to be an offseason trade. I really did. I mean, I thought that would be a great move. The Bears have plenty of money to spend. Like you said, plenty of draft capital to spend. Now, granted, I don't think you should give a first-round pick for that guy. Granted, he is a Khalil Mack, type of pass rusher there. So, I mean, I think that's a situation for my Bears. If we could get it, that would be amazing there. But we'll see.
That's no Jalen Carter that you could have gotten.
No Jalen Carter. Yeah. Granted, I love my boy Darnell Wright. He has done really good in his time in Chicago so far, but he's no Jalen Carter.
So, do have a question popped in for G-Dog.
G-Dog.
Needs a flex this week. Deontay, Tank Dale, or Deontay? Which is a good question. There's a lot of people out there that want to know what the split between the Bears running backs this week with Roschon Johnson coming back.
I went out there and picked up Deontay Foreman in a couple leagues last week, started him just with the scenario that they're in. We do have Roschon back this week. However, I don't think that they're going to exactly just throw him to the wolves. So I think at least for this week only. Now, granted, I think next week Roschon's going to take a little bit more of that work, especially in the passing game. I think Foreman's going to probably get at least 55 to 60% of the touches this week. But that still, that still goes without saying. I'm going to assume this is if it's not a PPR or a half point, I'm definitely going with Deonta Foreman. So let's see. So Pittsburgh is at home against Jacksonville. Houston's
Excellent
on the
matchup.
road. I know we got Bobby Trees there. I mean, Pittsburgh,
Bobby Trees out today, by the way.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. What did I say? Whatever I said, I meant to say Bobby Trees is out.
Yeah.
Bobby Trees is out. Okay. Tank Dell has been a little up and down though. So for me, the choice is between Deontay and Deonta there. So George Pickens is getting a little bit more of a role in that game. So I think if it's a full point PPR, it's really close between Foreman and I think I'm gonna go down to Foreman.
Yeah, I think if it's half point PPR, standard scoring league, or classic scoring league, however you want to refer to it, I'd probably go Deontay Foreman myself. Like you said, I think that he still kind of holds a lion's share of the work this week. They're going to work
next week. That changes, but yes.
Yeah, Roschon kind of gets eased more into it today, probably looking at 40% of the snaps today. I mean, you just can't take a performance like Deontay Foreman had last week and then put him in a 30% target usage share in the backfield. That's just doesn't. That at that point, you're more or less telling me your coaching staff is garbage. But if it's full point PPR, I'm going to go with Deontay.
But it is though. Our coaching staff is crap.
But they are. But yeah, no. If it's full point PPR, G-Dog, I'm going to go with Deontay Johnson there. I feel like last week was a good start coming back from the injury. He got eased into the game, played rather well. You kind of saw a little bit of the return to the targets there. But what helped out big time last week was George Pickens seeing a lot of off coverage because Deontay Johnson came back. So
sure, and that helps the offense in general. Like I said, I mean, it feels like a Deontay Johnson's going to have like a 5 for 50 kind of a week. Deonta Foreman's going to have about 60 or 70 rushing yards, 3 catches or so out there. Which again, for me, that would put him in front. I think Foreman may have a touchdown. To me, the real question though too, and I think this is really important. Your opponent that you played, is he up on you right now? Because if you need a home run, I think Tank Dell is a home run. If you need that, I played Josh Allen in the league the other day. Chris Godwin.
This guy had Gabe Davis in his lineup against me.
Right.
Yeah, that kind of a situation.
Yeah. But, Tank Dell is definitely the home run guy there. But if you just need a guy who, hey, I'm going to consistently go out there, I'm going to go get some points out there. I think it's a big thing to be able to look at week in, week out. Are you projected to win? Who are you going up against? Granted, we don't have any bye weeks this week. So
guy's playing Keenan Allen as flex.
Woo, man, if he's Keenan Allen's flex, man. Okay.
I got stacked.
Yeah.
If that's the case.
So I mean, if you need that home, run, I think Foreman at best is probably going to see, 100 total yards and a touchdown. So I mean, Tank Dell could have a really good week. So to me, the choice is between Foreman and Dell in that case. If this guy's going to be stacked up against you, need some points. Deontay Johnson, I don't think is going to be, rolling out 100 and a touch here, but the other two guys could. So
yeah, that's really kind of more of good point with the you need an upside ceiling type play like that. And if you check Debro, my guy that's over there at Fantasy Pros, he put out this morning, he's manifesting a 100-yard and a touchdown game from Tank Dell today. I mean, it's a good matchup. Really, sure. All three players there have a good matchup. It's just who has the highest ceiling out of all these players, and who do we feel is probably going to reach that potential. And I mean, I think that's like I said. I think full point PPR. I've got Johnson. You've kind of got a mix of Tank Dell and Deontay Foreman. I do think Tank Dell's the home run play, like you mentioned, though. So that is a tough decision. I would probably lean with that guy having Keenan Allen in the flex, though. I'd probably lean Tank Dell and hope for that long shot play
if you're up against it. Yeah, I mean, I think Keenan Allen's going to have a really good game. So, it seems like you need some points there. So, I think I'd go Dell in that scenario just because I think you're going to need a little bit more in the points column there.
Yeah, because I think Keenan Allen's in store for probably a get-right game after last week where he disappointed somewhat in the plus match.
I mean,
it's not getting in the end zone, not getting the catches that we're accustomed to seeing.
I mean, Josh
Uh,
Palmer has taken on such a big role. I mean, I know you and I predicted that he would have a role, but I
mhm.
mean, since the Mike Williams injury, he has more points than Keenan Allen. So
Right. Yeah, no, for sure. That's one that I'm kind of keeping an eye on too, looking for any kind of last minute injury designations. Word is Josh Palmer's playing today. I know he missed 2 practices and then limited on Friday, so that's something to keep an eye on too. So if he kind of comes into that game and somewhat limited,
he'll
that's
be
going to
fine.
be a tough one for
Just like
Keenan's.
last week.
Jason Willis, can we
Malik's
play
brother.
anyone? Malik Willis. Can we play anyone in the Cardinals' backfield? He's got DeMarcado in a couple leagues. Not sure if it's a playable scenario.
Man, screw Keontae Ingram. Seriously.
Yeah, you don't know who's going to get what in that backfield. But I think the bigger thing for me today with DeMarcado is that game script is going to be heavily in his favor from a usage standpoint. He's going to be the guy that's going to catch the passes out of the backfield. He's the receiving threat out of any of the choices in the backfield,
They're
and
gonna be down.
Baltimore's going to boat race them today. And just for the way that the Ravens have been playing the last few weeks, they're on another level right now. So I think that DeMarcado, especially from a flex perspective, if you can kind of sneak him in as a flex, you're probably looking at a guy that's going to bring you 5 receptions out of the backfield, might get you a junk time score at the end of the game. I think he's worth playing in the right scenario. Kind of goes back to the G Dog question too: is are you needing a safe floor? Or are you needing kind of a home run play today, based on who you're playing, the matchups that you're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like DeMarcado, but again, I actually picked him up and am playing him in one of our leagues that it actually rewards a point for every 5 yards rushing versus a point for every 10. So I've got a couple leagues that I am playing him in, more of a flex scenario versus an actual starting running back situation there. But yeah, like you said, I think they're going to be down. I think we're going to have some dump offs there as well to him. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a playable scenario. Again, who are you playing him over? If you have a
Yeah.
viable option, I don't know that I'd necessarily do that just for trust factor, but yeah, I mean, flex scenario, I think that's a good start.
Yeah. So Jason, that like we're kind of mentioning there, just depends on the roster build that you've got currently in place and how things look there, what you're looking at matchup wise against your opponent. Most often than not, we're usually going to tell you to put a running back in your flex. But this year is a little bit tricky because of the nature of the running back position at its core. I mean, the way that the wide receiver position has been scoring week in and week out, they're usually the more trusted option. But we don't know what you've got as far as the rest of your roster. You might be looking to choose from that you could plug in DeMarcado. So that would be the other question there. So, all right. So looking at kind of get into some of the questions that we're looking at with some of these games, talking some game slate and things like that. What's one guy that you're looking for today that you're kind of on the fence with, and you need to see a big game from today to start trusting them in your fantasy lineups?
Ooh, I mean, there's plenty of guys like that. Somebody that is. I mean, granted, I think he's a week in, week out starter, but I really need to start seeing something from him. Is Devonta Smith? He has been, pretty mostly down. AJ Brown has taken so much of the work there in that offense. So I'm looking for him to have a big game today. He's in a couple of my FanDuel lineups here, so I feel like he's gonna have that. Hey, this needs to be a get right game here. Falcons, I think with the Falcons passing offense there, Kyle Pitts, Drake London, I think is two of those guys there that I think they line up to have a great matchup today. They've been kind of middle of the road here so far. So those are two guys that I'm kind of taking a look at. Jalen Waddle there with his back, what is he going to do in that scenario? I mean, this seems to be the kind of game that I mean, with Tyreek Hill just coming off like gangbusters here lately. What is he going to do? So those are some of the scenarios that I'm playing in FanDuel today, just because of guys having some low ownership, there. So that's some of the scenarios I'm kind of taking a look at here. What about you?
For me, Dameon Pierce is one that I really want to see something out of today. They're coming back out of the bye. The matchup is great. You can run on Carolina. That's something that's a key indicative thing. But what I don't like is comments made from the coaching staff prior to the bye is their offensive coordinator even saying, maybe Dameon Pierce is not the right fit for our run scheme. So that's something. Maybe
I
this
got
could be a
Singletary like freaking
squeaky.
everywhere, bro.
We need a squeaky wheel gets the grease type of game from Dameon Pierce today. But if
I need that Dameon Pierce nothing and Singletary, let's go.
but that's the thing. He's another guy to kind of pick up off the waiver wire if he's available.
He needs to be if he's available in your league, he needs to be a priority ad. He is somebody that his usage has ticked up each of the last couple of weeks that they've had. Pierce has not exactly shown much of anything. So especially if you're like Brandon, if you're a Pierce owner, you should already have him on. You should already have Singletary on your team.
Let's see. Let's look at it real quick over the course of the last few weeks here. So week 6, you had Dameon Pierce at a season low 35% snap percentage. That was coming off of 3 straight where he was pushing 60% snaps. Devin Singletary comes in week 6 at a 52% snap share. So he was in the backfield a lot more. Only saw 40% of the rushing attempts to Dameon Pierce's 43%. But where you really kind of saw things take off were in the pass catching realms, where Devin Singletary's ran 50% and 40% routes over the last 3 games, outpacing Dameon Pierce by a wide margin in both. So it's definitely you feel like this is kind of rounding into the form of designated roles for these running backs in this backfield, where we saw in the preseason and all the buzz with Dameon Pierce was like, oh man, look at this guy's catching passes. He's on the field for every snap with the first team offense in preseason. Oh man, shoot this guy to the moon in fantasy football 23.
He was so good last year.
Yeah, and he looked good prior to injury and getting banged up. That was the other thing too. And now they've come out and first few weeks, and Dameon Pierce just looks hesitant running behind that offensive line and just cannot avoid tackles. That's been the other thing too. But then you see he's slightly week after week losing target share and routes run in the offense where Devin Singletary is picking up. So it's a little bit of cause for concern. If you have Pierce as an RB2, RB3, you might be able to kind of work around it to a degree. With maybe waiver wires that you've picked up and you've gotten other guys onto your roster. So that's something to keep in mind of there. I did want to point out too, talking from a game slate and information perspective, Jennifer Eakins that I follow on Twitter, on X, Twitter, whatever.
It's Twitter for a while.
She just posted a few minutes ago. She lives less than 5 miles from the stadium in Denver. Can confirm that it's been snowing since yesterday. It's supposed to stop snowing right at game time. So she expects it to be no biggie for KC at Denver, just chilly 25 degrees.
Take advantage of that in DFS. If you're on there, I mean, I had Pat Mahomes in yesterday. I mean, if it had been snowing in blizzard conditions like it sometimes can be in Denver, maybe pivot away from that. But they know how to clear the snow in Denver. Let's go.
Sure.
Or as they say, at least on the opposite side, let's ride.
Let's ride. Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's ride the tractor to get the snow off the field and then come out for 227 yards and 1 touchdown to Cortland Sutton.
That's right.
So Justin Gervin jumping into the chat here wants to know, he's got Pierce in right now, but has Foreman on the bench. Feel like it's a coin flip. What say you on this potential matchup here?
Man, that's close.
I mean, you're looking at a similar situation with both of them right now.
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
both have excellent matchups.
Oh, man, it's tough, dude. I mean, it's tough. It's a difficult thing, but you know what? I guess that's why you're reaching out to us. I personally
follow-up question
on picking Singletary. Would you drop Chuba? I would not drop Chuba. Henderson's time is limited.
Sure.
I mean, Henderson's time is limited. Whenever they bring, whenever Kyron Williams hopefully comes back, and it looks like he's going to be on track to miss the minimum there, Henderson could be droppable. I'd almost see if you had anybody else to drop. Singletary would be again with you having Pierce. I think it's important because you absolutely lock up a backfield in that scenario. So I think you definitely want to add Singletary. I would drop Henderson if there's nobody else to drop, because I think those guys in a bubble are a similar player. But Pierce, Foreman, I would probably lean to go Foreman. I don't trust Pierce right now. Like Brandon said, until he proves it, he's not going to be in my starting lineup unless I absolutely have to. But Foreman's probably a 1 week guy. You could almost drop Foreman maybe even after this week, but that's not going to help you out with Singletary if he does go off today. So,
yeah, I think my thing there is with Pierce already on the roster, I think it would be the smart move to drop Henderson to get Singletary.
Yeah.
Then that way you're covered with the backfield, and you do have, Henderson's going to be a viable fantasy option over the next 2 to 3 weeks, possibly, if that. But once Kyron Williams returns, we don't know how that's going to shake out, how things are going to look with that backfield. McVay's going to want to kind of keep him on the field some and limit the opportunities for Kyron Williams. But, when you saw Kyron Williams, when he was on the field, he was putting up monster numbers in fantasy early on in the season. So it's hard for me to assume that they're going to get away from that. So that's what I would do. I would drop Henderson. Bad matchup really on the road against Cowboys today. So
you're not playing him today.
Yeah, you're not losing much in that aspect. So I would drop him, pick up Singletary. I'd go for the higher upside there because there's a good chance. Singletary could take a little bit of an ownership in that backfield after today. So I would probably bank on that as opposed to holding on to a limited value with Henderson is how I would look at it. He said, I have Spears, but want to wait for the trade deadline. Smart. I would keep Spears anyways.
Yeah, you need to keep him anyway. Yeah. The kind of season Henry's had, he could start to eat away at that target share, and especially Titans are getting down in games late. They're not going to be throwing the ball to Derrick Henry. They're going to be throwing the ball to Spears. So definitely somebody to keep. I think, like Brandon said, I think Henderson is the guy to drop. As good as he is, you're not playing him this week. That's only 1 week closer to Kyron Williams coming back. In your scenario, you're probably not playing him anyway. I would add Singletary.
Very true. Very true. Big fantasy news coming in for me in Rappaport right now. Juju Smith-Schuster making his return to the Patriots today.
Oh, yippee. all my teams that I had Juju is like a 4 or 5 on there. Great. Let me hurry up and get him into my lineup today, B.
I think I drafted him in 2 leagues at all throughout the draft season, and he's been well dropped weeks and weeks ago. So
there's some bigger leagues that we're in that I almost have to keep them just because there is literally nobody on the wire.
Yeah, that's the other app. That's the other look at it too. There's a lot of crap on the wire, so you kind of have to hold on to players like that. So, outside of that, let's look through some of the game slates today. You mentioned Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, that receiving situation for the Dolphins at home against the Patriots defense today, and Bill Belichick. I know in the past Tyreek Hill has somewhat struggled against Bill Belichick defenses. Does that give you a little bit of cause for concern for Tua today in the Dolphins offense?
No, there's plenty of other receiving options there. I'm good.
What about the backfield? Raheem Mostert likely to play, has been an RB1 throughout the season so far this year. Are you feeling any kind of confidence with Raheem Mostert today?
If you got him, start him. There's no way in your leagues that you cannot start Raheem Mostert with the kind of year that he's had. Like there is no way.
And Dolphins an 8.5 point favorite too right now. So you figure game script wise second half that you're probably going to be leaning a little bit more in the run game with Mostert, hopefully not getting banged up in the early stages of the game. Do you see any Jeff Wilson today for the Dolphins?
I'm sure you see some of them, but for me, he's not anybody that I'm gonna. Jeff Wilson to me is a flash in the pan. If Raheem Mostert was out this week, sure. Maybe somebody to take a look at, but I just don't think in that scenario that they're going to give Jeff Wilson enough to have the time of day. Maybe he finds the end zone, but I don't really see him being a factor in this game whatsoever.
Then going to the most exciting game on the NFL slate today, and what Nick told me prior to us getting onto this morning podcast was the most expensive game to get into today. Jets and Giants. Over under total of 35, lowest on the slate for week 8. Do we feel like
it's gonna be a barn burner?
Is there anything to take advantage of outside of your typical starts here? You got Saquon Barkley in the lineup. Garrett Wilson is one of those.
Breece Hall,
borderline. Breece Hall's an obvious.
Is he going to go to Breece Hall? I own in every FanDuel today. Like, I think the
Well,
scenario
that's
is ripe for him to come in
bad
and kill
news
it.
for you. He's in every one of my lineups as well.
Let me go ahead and get him out. Shit.
Yeah, when I first started looking at
Great.
lineups and everything for earlier on in the week, he was immediately my plant flag. Get him into my lineup, no doubt about it. Start for this week was Brees Hall. So we'll see how
Great.
that works out. Now, on the other side of the coin, the
Thanks,
guy that I
Pete.
wrote about in my my woos and boos on rotoballer.com this week. So if you haven't looked at that yet, just go check that out on rotoballer.com. Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards is a guy that I've got as a sneaky must play at running back this week. Great matchup. Ravens heavily favored in that game. Edwards is a guy that's getting double-digit touches every single week. I think game script dependent wise, he gets in the end zone today and puts up possibly low end RB1, that fringe RB1, RB2 numbers today for fantasy managers. Can you co-sign for that? How are you feeling about Gus Edwards?
I mean, I think with his dollar value of where he's at there, I think that could be a thing. I don't know. I like some other matchups, maybe just a touch better in that scenario. There, I mean, Justice Hill is still a thing on there, so I don't know. I mean, I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, no, I think it's solid play there all around. Matchup for DFS purposes. You saw Lamar Jackson was really a solid play in week 7 last week. I just mentioned the
Dude,
game script
so
and
close
everything
for
this
me.
week. Is Lamar Jackson again a guy that you're going to jump back into the water for this week, given the possible outcome in that matchup?
I don't know. The only reason I'm a little hesitant is because I think they're going to jump out and I think they're going to have a big lead, which leads to running ball, which leads to Gus Edwards, but it could also lead to Justice Hill. Like it's a scenario I would rather have somebody else. I don't think he's going to be bad. I just don't know. I think with his high ownership percentage, maybe not somebody that I am exactly targeting first.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's definitely outside of Lamar Jackson, who I do have a lineup in with. What was your go-to? I know you're playing a lineup with Mahomes, but outside of that, who do you feel is a prime candidate for a big week in DFS this week at quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, I've got Patrick Mahomes. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is that guy. I've got Joe Burrow in the other lineup that I'm playing. I mean, he's a little lower owned. I feel like they're going to be down. I feel like they're going to be throwing the ball. Look what happened last week with Kirk Cousins. I mean, against that very same Niners D. So I've got Jamar Chase in my lineup. I think he could be lined up for a multi-touchdown game. So in both of those lineups that I have today, Jamar Chase is going to be that guy. Zay Flowers, I think, is a guy that, we were just talking about Lamar Jackson. I think he could be in line for an early touchdown over there. So I definitely have him in my lineup there. Let's see what else we got. Yeah, we talked about Jalen Waddle there earlier. George Kittle is somebody else, too, that I think could be in line for a very nice week. He had a good week last week, couldn't find the end zone, but I think this is that week that he could find. So that's just a couple of the guys. Jets defense. If you need a defense, I had the Bears last week. Man, what a great defense that they were. So if you're looking for a good FanDuel defense there, they could be in line, especially with Tyrod Taylor in there. He could definitely be in line for some action.
Yeah, that's for me the DFS play of the week at defense has got to be the Atlanta Falcons without a doubt. Going against the turnover prone Will Levis for the Tennessee Titans today. I think you're going to see a lot of Derrick Henry in that matchup today, whether it be as a showcase for potential trade or whether it be just the fact that Mike Vrabel knows that he has nothing at quarterback to move the ball down the field consistently. You're going to see a lot of running there. So I know we got a few new people jumping into the show here in the live stream.
Welcome.
So shoot in your questions into the live chat there. We will gladly answer those for you. So definitely do that for us. But outside of that, going back into some of the slate here, talk some of these games. You mentioned as well also earlier, Rams at Cowboys. Dak Prescott, actually have him ranked inside QB1 as a top 10 play today for me at the position. Shocker, I know.
Wow.
But there's a little bit of deep diving into that aspect because going into looking at the numbers for the matchups and everything this week when I was getting stuff set for my article on Rotoballer, I did come across the fun little nugget that Dak Prescott post-bye throughout his career, believe is averaging 23 fantasy points per game post-bye. So that's the kind of something to keep in mind there too. And then also looking at the Cowboys offense in general, in a home game, they've scored no less than 27 points in a home game dating back to the week 9 bye in 2022. So you got some good things to go by with that offense today. I think there's question marks surrounding them that were heading into the bye after the Chargers game. And then obviously after the dog stomping they received in San Francisco. Hopefully the bye, they kind of rounded some things back into shape. I know CD Lamb's been a little bit irritable in terms of his usage in the offense. How are we feeling with this matchup? Do you buy into Cowboys offensive players from a DFS perspective today?
You know, I haven't really, oh, there it is, the phone. I have not really paid much attention to the Cowboys in this slate. I mean, maybe I should be looking a little bit more. But I don't know. It seems like to me, not having the Cowboys, focus, I guess, more like you do. I haven't really taken much of a look at players on either side of the ball in this one. I think Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua could be in for a good matchup here, but I really haven't taken a look at much Cowboys. I feel like it's going to be 20-17 kind of a game. I don't know if it's anything that I'm targeting, but you tell me.
I mean, I feel like you're looking at a kind of a higher scoring game. Over under on it right now is 45.5. With the Cowboys holding a looks like 6.5 point favorite against the Rams.
Yeah.
I think the Rams cover that. Obviously,
I agree.
Looking at a bet from a betting perspective, but I think this game hits the over. I'm feeling this game's going to be coming down to like a 30-23 type game, 27-24, somewhere in that range is what I'm looking at. So there's going to be scoring opportunities out there. I don't feel good about Tony Pollard in this matchup. I don't think that he's going to provide those high-end RB1 numbers that a lot of people are expecting.
So who do you think is going to do something? Is this going to be a CD Lamb and Turd Ferguson game?
That Jake Ferguson is is my tight end of play today in DFS. So I do think Turd Ferguson is going to be a guy to watch out for. You see it a lot in these home matchups, especially against teams that are really aggressive from a pass rush perspective, is that Ferguson gets out and kind of over the middle rather quickly, and it's just a safety valve for Dak that he just sees him so fast and hits him with a quick completion. So Lamb, Ferguson are two guys that I like there today from a potential standpoint and waiver wire ideology. I might look at picking up Michael Gallup just to hold on to him. If you've got a roster spot to burn, 2 weeks ago against the Chargers, he did have 10 targets. Didn't really haul in a lot of the catches coming off those targets, but he was really involved in the offense. So that's something that I would look at if you've got a spot to burn a guy on the last roster spot on the bench. He's just one of those churn guys, waiver fodder guys. Throw him out there, grab Michael Gallup just to see how today goes. Because obviously you don't want to see a big game out of Gallup, and then next thing you know, you're priced out of the market when waivers run on Wednesday.
Yeah.
That's how I'm feeling about the Cowboys and Rams matchup, though. But
okay.
You did mention Burrow and the 49ers. I'll jump into that too. Burrow, I do like today. Team saying that he's finally 100%. He's fully healthy. There's no issues there. They've not had to rehab the calf. So that's a good sign for the offense.
He looked way more like it the last game that they played before the bye.
Right.
He looked like he had the movement going on just a little bit there. Like
working back into shape. And it's a good indication. And like you said, Kirk Cousins manhandled the 49ers secondary on Monday night. And the big key to that is pass protection. If the Bengals can hold off Bosa and the pass rushers for the 49ers, that outside for the 49ers, the secondary is not really great. They're probably more mediocre than what we want to really come out and say. So if pass protection holds up for Burrow, obviously he's got the weapons. Jamar Chase, I think, is going to be in line for a solid day today, probably 100 yards and at least one touchdown is what I would think he's going to come home with today. I like the Bengals to keep this one close, too. That's something else to kind of watch for in today's matchup. I know the 49ers right now, 5-point favorite. 43.5 is the over-under on that. How are you feeling about that game? Do you feel like that's a good spot, the over-under at 43.5? Do you think they hit the over on that?
Yeah, I think it's going to go over. Now, if Sam Darnold had been playing and not Brock Purdy, maybe I think Brock Purdy's going to be in line for a halfway decent game as well here today.
Oh, you mean the concussed Brock Purdy?
only figured it out on the flight. Yeah, I mean, I think both those offenses are going to come to play today. I think that game is probably, I would say, even easily going to go over.
Yeah.
On there. So I think you're going to see one of the teams is going to be in the 30s, the other team in the 20s. So that's a 50-point total right there. I think we're going to be over on this game. So
yeah, because I even had a 49ers fan on Twitter yesterday. He even come to me and readily admitted he's like, yeah, that felt like a cover up for a bad performance from Purdy to say that he was concussed after the fact. So I mean that's a 49ers fan coming out and saying that too. Right. So another interesting tidbit. Well, going back to the Tank Dell discussion from earlier, that Debro just posted on Twitter himself. Birthday today for Tank Dell.
Oh.
So we have the birthday
get
narrative.
Him in your FanDuels, people.
Get him out there and get him going, locked, stocked, and ready to go. Tank Dell today, birthday touchdown narrative. That is you love to see that. That's usually a good indication for fantasy players. So that's
Chipper Jones, like in baseball, had some big stat where he always homered on his birthday for like 5 out of 6 years. It was crazy. So news and nuggets
for sure. I know the guys that I want to say, what is it on I want to say with Jeff, it's either on, I think it's Jeff Manns on Sirius XM, and one of his producers always bets the birthday touchdown narrative with players. He'll find a player that's it's his birthday, and then he puts a bet in on an anytime touchdown for him. So that's something that it's something to play today.
Hits. I mean,
it more than likely will hit.
Apparently, you also need to do the same thing with Travis Kelce finding the end zone whenever Taylor Swift is there. And by the way, she's not going to be there today, so probably don't have Kelce in your FanDuel lineup. Just saying.
Yeah, you might want to pull that off the table today. So looking at, also wanted to touch on a couple of other of these games today too. We've mentioned the Texans and the Panthers. We've kind of gone through that a little bit. We mentioned Jets Giants. Going into Browns Seahawks.
This is a weird game to predict.
It is a very tough game to predict. Seahawks are only sitting at a 3.5-point favorite, 37.5-point over under. PJ Walker still in for the Browns, underperforming Geno Smith against the best defense in the league. I feel like this game hits the under on this one. I don't feel like there's going to be a whole lot of offensive excitement. Tyler Lockett's a little bit banged up coming into this one. Kenneth Walker's somewhat a little bit banged up, but was off the injury report yesterday, should be good to play there. Do you see anything to go after in this matchup from a fantasy perspective?
It feels like a DK is going to be the guy that's going to score on the Seattle side. Over there, I'm in agreement with you. It feels like a low scoring game for some reason. Over there, who knows what the hell the Cleveland backfield is going to do? I'm feeling David Njoku and DK Metcalf are going to be the people that find the end zone in this game. Kenneth Walker probably has a halfway decent game, but I think at least in terms of, in terms of your leagues, you got to play him. If you got him, you got to play him. There's no way you can sit him on the bench. In terms of DFS, I'm not really touching somebody like that. I think he could very easily have a big over week, especially with his price tag that he's going to have. So
sure. Yeah, that's kind of one I've really kind of steered away from that game altogether. I've got no no skin in the game for this one, whether it's from a DFS perspective or from a fantasy perspective whatsoever. I think in our keeper league that we do, I've got Kenneth Walker going in the matchup, and that's the only player I think I'm playing in this matchup at all today across all leagues. So,
I mean,
no interest.
I've got Amari Cooper. I mean, it's just there's not really, I mean, you don't want to have Amari Cooper on your bench. Amari Cooper, I mean, this is actually a decent game for him, but with his usage or what he had last week with PJ Walker in the lineup, makes me a little nervous. Again, I do not want him in a daily kind of a thing, but I mean, in my leagues, you don't want to put a guy like that on your bench and have him go for 100 and a touchdown, which I mean, the Seattle secondary is not at least that good. So I mean, it's tough to. I mean, it is.
Has looked good though.
Yeah, I mean, but it's tough. It's tough to bench a guy like that. It's tough to bench Amari Cooper. I mean, I've got a league. We were talking earlier about Tank Dell. I've got Tank Dell, Romeo Dobbs, and Amari Cooper for my last wide receiver position. I've got Amari Cooper. Again, it's tough to bench, a guy like Amari Cooper, where I think he's coming in and could have a decent matchup. Hopefully last week, since he didn't get targeted as much, maybe PJ Walker goes to him just a little bit more here. And I mean, he was getting targeted last week, just wasn't catching the ball. So
I, on the other hand, do have Amari Cooper on the bench playing Josh Palmer over Amari Cooper this week.
Sure.
If
I had that scenario, I probably would be too.
Just feel a little bit more confident than that. So outside of that, so we do have more than likely, I think it was confirmed yesterday, David Montgomery out for the Lions again, week 8. How are we feeling with another potential big game from Jahmyr Gibbs?
I mean, obviously you got to start him. It's Vegas. Look at what Foreman did last week against the Raiders. I mean, this is a smash spot. If he were in the DFS slate today, whoo, man. Yeah, if you got Jahmyr Gibbs, I mean, look at what he did. Look at what he did last week, and I mean, he didn't exactly have an amazing game, but at least in terms of your overall numbers, but he was catching the ball quite a bit. So he ultimately wound up having, a RB1 performance out there. So yeah, if you got him, you're starting.
Yeah, that's without a doubt you're doing that. And then on the flip side of that, with that matchup on Monday night, Devontae Adams, still kind of been a little bit suspect over the last few games with Brian Hoyer and Aiden O'Connell. That was the thing. They forced the ball to him early in that game against the Bears. He had 5 catches. I think 5 catches for 60 yards at the end of the first quarter or a few minutes into the second quarter, and then was disappeared after that. Do you think that's going to be something that they're going to do again this week, or are we going to see 4 quarters Devontae Adams in this matchup?
No, Jimmy Garoppolo's back. I mean, Garoppolo is distributing the ball a little bit more evenly between him and Jacoby Myers. So yeah, I mean, if you've got him, I think Devontae Adams is actually somebody to maybe trade for if Garoppolo is healthy. Garoppolo throws the ball, to Devontae Adams. Now, granted, Myers has come on and been really, really good. You remember a couple of years ago where Jacoby Myers would catch all these balls, just can't find the end zone? Apparently, every week he's in the end zone now.
Yes.
The other scenario that I was actually just going through in that game and talking about Raiders and Lions is Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs, I'm actually benching in a couple of leagues this week. The Lions it's going to be tough. I feel like the Lions are going to be up, which that's going to be a bad game script for the Raiders. So Jacobs has not been catching the ball a whole lot here lately. So Jacobs, I have a league, our main event that we do in Kentucky. I have him on the bench in favor of Javonte Williams and Deonta Foreman. I just don't see. I mean, if you go back and look at his games, he's not finding the end zone. He probably should have. He had plenty of chances last week to find the end zone in Chicago. They gave him the ball inside the red zone multiple times. Just cannot find the end zone this year. Coming off, the performance that he had last year. Granted, I think he's going to be a second half of the year kind of a guy. Again, somebody else to maybe trade for in some of your leagues there with some of the matchups he has coming up. But this week, for me, if you've got a better option, it could be benchable.
Yeah, high on the season of 77 yards, and as a 25 rush attempt game in week 6 against the Patriots, was still only good for 20. The running back finish of 20 that week. He's only finished as an RB1 twice this year, and that was weeks 4 and 5 where he got into the end zone. Still only saw 58 yards, 69 yards in those 2 games respectively, but also added in 8 and 5 receptions in that game. Since that time, since that time, he's only seen 3 receptions total over the last 2 weeks. And now, like you mentioned, is on the road against the Lions. Tough matchup. I've actually got him ranked as RB17 coming into the week, and just behind Javonte Williams and Gus Edwards. So, for a little bit of narrative and context as where I think Josh Jacobs is going to perform this week, that is a not a guy that I'm feeling very confident in. Much like we talked about with Dameon Pierce earlier in the year, Josh Jacobs is not going to lose his job. Where Dameon Pierce, there's a little bit of speculation going around those two players right now.
Theories and speculation.
Definitely.
So you also brought up Javonte Williams. He's a guy that you and I over the last couple of years have been on. Granted, he had his injury last year. He's out. Talking about Javonte and how he's been going, it's been a little bit of a slow start. But you saw last week he's starting to come on just a little bit. I think this is the kind of week that Javonte should be in your FanDuel lineups. You know how I know he's getting good is Brandon tried to trade for him in a league that we're in. So that's how I know Javonte is getting good.
Yeah.
Not going to put that on me, B.
Yeah.
No, Javonte is a guy that, I'm starting him in a league. I feel he's getting some dump offs, so he's getting some action. They're getting him more and more work each and every week as he starts to fully 100% come back and trust, his injury situation from this last year. So he's a guy. He's not that expensive in FanDuel. He's a RB2, a flex scenario that I think, I think he's going to find the end zone this week, B.
Yeah. No, I think the options are there. The workload's coming up and increasing. He's slowly getting better week by week as far as, when you look at it, a lot of his run rates, avoided tackles, things like that are starting to pick up. I think he and Breece Hall are both leading the league in missed tackles forced per attempt, which is unworldly for me to even wrap my head around. Both guys coming off of ACL injuries last year. Usually that's a stat you see guys coming back from ACLs and they're very low on the list and not performing well in because they're very hesitant with their moves on the field and they don't really want to put out jukes and things like that on the players that are coming in for a tackle. Whereas Williams and Breece Hall both have been looking, but Williams starting out slower. Hall was more of a game script thing for the Jets. They wanted to ease him in, but now you see Javonte is starting to pick it up. I think that there's a little bit of that. There's going to be really of a plateau here for him the next couple of weeks to where he's going to get back into that steady RB2 conversation in weekly lineups. So he's a guy that I would. Obviously, you mentioned I'm trying to trade for. He's a guy that I would actually try to go out there and try to acquire because fantasy managers might still be looking at it from a season long perspective and going, yeah, he's not been great. And you can get him for a kind of a discount up until this point. But if you project it out season long on the other side of the coin, I think he's a guy that's going to finish rather well.
Sure. Like we had discussed a little bit earlier, right now is the time. Right now is the prime time to start making some trade offers in your leagues. Assess where you're at. Go get guys like a Javonte Williams. Really, truly like a Josh Jacobs. Jacobs just happens to have a bad matchup this week. If Jacobs had a better matchup, I would probably have him ranked inside the top 10. You throw him against that same Bears defense that they had last week, maybe in Las Vegas with Jimmy Garoppolo. Nope. He's going to be inside my top 10. So I think a lot for him. I think they're going to start getting him a whole lot more work. Now that Garoppolo is back, he's going to see some dump offs. That's the only thing I'm a little bit hesitant on as you look the last 2 weeks with Hoyer, with O'Connell in there. They've not been giving the ball and dumping it off to Jacobs, whereas you can very easily see 8 receptions, 5 receptions for Josh Jacobs. He's going to be getting the ball. So that's the only reason I'm a little bit nervous, but I think right now is a great time to do some trading.
Sure.
Speaking of trading, did you see the trade that I completed here pretty much right as we were coming on here?
I noticed that, yes.
And I got it proposed to me, but it's a little bit of the only reason I made is I have the wide receiver depth. So I traded Devonta Smith, which I don't want to do, but I need running backs. Got Ramondre Stevenson and Jerry Jeudy in that trade. So again, this in this league too. Ramondre again is a guy that I had targeted. I think that he's gonna in a point per 5 rushing. I think it's a little bit better, but he's a guy who has not been very good. Zeke Elliott's starting to take a little bit more of that share there, but
Yeah.
I'm in desperate need of a running back in that. I mean, starting a wide receiver in the league, and this is a league that Brandon runs, it's tough to start a wide receiver in your flex spot and actually win. You need 3 good running backs. So gave up Devonta Smith, who I mean, I think is going to be really good the rest of the year. But I have wide receiver depth in there, so I traded off a better receiver. Jerry Jeudy's a coin flip. If Jerry Jeudy can do something for me, anything for me, especially if he gets dealt, I'm going to be very happy. So,
yeah, if he gets dealt to Carolina and then he's sharing time on the field with Adam Thielen and DJ Shark,
that's going to be a bad scenario. That's going to be a bad scenario. But yeah. But there's a couple scenarios out there
that possibly be traded to. That's my other thing with Jerry Jeudy. I don't know the team that might be interested in acquiring him right now. I mentioned earlier on here that the Cleveland Browns were looking into possible trades for a wide receiver. I don't think that's a fit.
I mean, the Patriots. I mean, I don't think that they have many receiving options there that are good.
Fantastic, good news. Cowboys left tackle Tyron Smith out today against the Rams. That's Michael Thomas officially active for the Saints. I know he popped up on the injury report last night, so that was something to kind of keep an eye on. But
let's touch because all the injury news just came out for the day here.
Today. Tyron Smith being out is not good for Tony Pollard, which I've already mentioned. I don't think is going to have a very good game today, anyways. Speaking of Tony Pollard. And you were talking about Ezekiel Elliott a second ago. Ezekiel Elliott's long touchdown run that he had a couple weeks back.
5.
Huh? No, he had an actual long touchdown run.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. His long touchdown run.
5 yards.
His top speed reached on that touchdown run higher than any top speed that Tony Pollard has reached in his career.
Wow.
Yeah. that was a weird tidbit that I came across, and I was like, golly. Okay, then. So
interesting.
Going through Xavier Howard out for the Dolphins today. They're getting Jalen Ramsey back. So that's right. I did want to ask you before we signed off of here, how are we feeling about Tyson Bagent today?
Oh, Teabag.
How are we feeling about Teabag?
Yeah, I mean, if you got him in a flex, I mean, I think he could have some rushing yards and a little bit of upside there. They're going to be down. I think he's going to have to be throwing the ball. They're just a little bit, especially in the second half. I mean, you could have worse starts out there. If he's your flex, if you're in a super flex and you start him as your number 2, there's a whole lot of guys that are out and hurt and questionable here. So I mean, depending, like I've got a freaking league. I'm deciding between Mac Jones, Kenny Pickett, and Josh Dobbs. If I had Bagent in there to be able to toss in, maybe you toss him in there.
Woo, man.
Yeah. Well, Deshaun Watson's in the mix too, and he's hurt. So
that's true. Deshaun Watson is don't get me started.
So in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. He's sure looking for someone to get him started. But outside of that, I mean, any other little tidbits you want to throw out there before we kind of sign off for the day, getting ready for week 8's fantasy football action?
Man, I think, the one little tidbit, we're talking about trades and everything. Jonathan Taylor, Zach Moss is a little banged up. It looks like he's going to play today, but he's a guy who I would say, obviously if you've got him in a weekly, start him with confidence there, but he's a guy too that I think could have that scenario where he could really ball out today with Zach Moss being a little limp. So what about you, B?
Outside of that, I mean, it's week 8. You kind of there's no teams on bye. Be smart with your roster decisions is really what I would point to today. Don't go by your projected totals that are in your lineups and your rosters for your website that you're currently running on. I mean, I think that's usually a case where people tend to kind of really get trapped when they're making lineup decisions. Don't go by the projected total score. If you know what you're looking at and you kind of study matchups, things like that, just you play your matchups regardless of what you see on the screen in front of you. You've got enough actual game data up until this point that you can use that to your advantage. I mean, what receiver is good in certain situations against this particular defense? What cornerback's lining up against this wide receiver? Things like that. whose offense is hot coming into this week, whose offense is not playing well coming into this week. So those are the kind of decisions that can really hinge whether you pull a victory away, and you might be in a must-win scenario this week too. I mean, if you're in that 3-4, 2-5 area, and you need to get on a run, you got to be smart about your lineup decisions today. Get that win and start to make a run towards the playoffs.
Make some trades. Go out there. I mean, you if you're not out there, if you're in a league, granted, I know Brandon and I are in some leagues that higher stakes leagues. There is no trading. I mean, you're living off the waiver wire week in, week out. But if you're in a league where you allow trades, I mean, you've got to go out there and find the teams that just lost their running back, just lost their wide receiver, whatever the case may be, and go out there and hit those trades. So you got to be active right now. Not a whole lot on the waiver wire, as we were talking about a little bit earlier. Especially if you're in a 12-man league, there's not a whole lot out there. So go out there, grab some deals, see what you can do. You never know what's going to be out there and who's going to agree to a deal.
Very true, very true. So that will wrap up today's Game Day Live. Hopefully everybody enjoyed. Soon. Yeah, hopefully be back soon. But outside of that, everyone enjoy Week 8. Hopefully you go out there and get some wins. And good luck to everyone out there. And we will talk to you again on another episode of Fantasy right here on rotoballer.com.
Good luck.
See ya.